Before we begin, take a breath. This isn't just a podcast. It's a new way to think, speak, and live in English. Welcome to Coffluent Podcast, where words flow, confidence grows, and every sip brings you closer to fluency. So to start us off today, I want you to picture Michael Jordan in a totally meaningless practice game.
Right, like a random Tuesday afternoon.
Exactly. We're talking low stakes. No cameras, no fans in the stands, just his own teammates. Yet, he is fighting for the ball, diving on the hardwood, completely locked in.
Like his life depends on it.
Yeah. And most of us watch elite athletes like that, and, well, we just assume their secret weapon is purely biological. We see the gold medals, the crazy reaction times, the raw genetics, and we just think, well, they're just built differently.
Which is, completely understandable, right? Because the physical aspect is what's visible. It's quantifiable.
Yeah, you can see it.
Exactly. But when you actually strip away the physical attributes and look at the underlying sports psychology, that biological explanation really falls short. You realize that elite performers aren't just training their bodies on a different level, they are processing reality on a completely different frequency.
Wow, processing reality differently.
Yeah. The physical execution is actually downstream from a highly engineered internal framework.
And that hidden internal framework is exactly what we're decoding in today's deep dive. We're looking at a really fascinating breakdown by A.J. Hoge, who analyzes the core concepts from the book The Champion's Mind.
It's a great analysis.
It really is. And our mission today isn't just to talk about sports. It's to extract the exact psychological architecture that champions use to handle immense pressure. And then, map those exact strategies directly onto your own life.
Right, because the cognitive tools are identical.
Exactly. Whether you're trying to master a second language like English or deliver a high-stakes business presentation or honestly, just simply stop spiraling into anxiety every time you make a tiny mistake.
Yeah, and it really all starts with the baseline motivation. That's the engine driving the whole machine. If you want to understand how a champion's mind works, you first have to look at whether they're running towards a specific goal or if they're running away from a potential failure.
Which brings us right back to that Michael Jordan example.
Right.
The reason he was diving for loose balls in a meaningless practice is because he was in a state of playing to win.
Yeah.
It's an aggressive, positive, goal-oriented mindset. But the opposite of that, and I think this is the trap that catches almost everyone when the pressure spikes, is playing not to lose.
Oh, absolutely. And playing not to lose is an entirely fear-based state.
Yeah.
Your primary objective shifts from, achieving greatness to simply surviving the moment without looking foolish. You're just focused on avoiding a mistake. And the neurological trap here is actually profound. Well, our brains are highly selective filters, right? And they are magnetically drawn to whatever we focus our intense attention on. So when your dominant thought is, don't fail, you're actively feeding your brain the concept of failure.
Oh, wow.
You're essentially giving your nervous system a target lock on the exact outcome you're terrified of.
It's the classic white carpet scenario. Imagine you're at a crowded networking event.
Oh, yeah.
And you're standing on this pristine, incredibly expensive white carpet, and you're holding a totally full, steaming cup of dark coffee.
A disaster waiting to happen.
Right. If you stare intensely at the rim of that cup, and your entire internal monologue is just, don't spill it, don't ruin the carpet, don't trip, what happens?
Absolute spilling.
You spill it because your arm gets stiff, your breathing becomes shallow, and your natural walking rhythm just completely breaks down.
That is a perfect illustration of what happens when the prefrontal cortex, the over-analytical part of your brain, tries to micromanage your automatic motor functions.
Right.
By obsessing over the spill, you disrupt your body's natural mechanics. You've basically anchored your physical state to panic. And this dynamic is especially dangerous when it comes to our internal self-talk.
Okay, wait. How does that translate to self-talk?
Well, let's say you're preparing for a massive negotiation, or you're about to speak in front of a crowd in a language you're still learning. You look in the mirror and tell yourself, I won't make a mistake, or I am not weak.
Sounds like standard motivation.
Right. You might think you're pumping yourself up, but biologically, you are sabotaging yourself.
Because the brain doesn't process the negative qualifier, right?
Yeah.
Saying, I'm not weak sounds like a great poster for your wall, but the brain is just hearing that heavy emotional word, weak.
Exactly. The subconscious mind is terrible at processing the word not in real time under stress. It operates on semantic priming. When you say, I won't make a mistake, the emotional weight of the word mistake literally lights up in your neural pathways.
So you're basically preloading the failure.
You are priming your brain with the vocabulary of failure. A champion meticulously curates their self-talk to bypass this entirely. So instead of I won't lose, it's I am going to win.
Oh, I see.
Instead of I won't mess up the speech, it is I am a powerful, articulate speaker.
Right.
It seems like a minor shift in grammar, but it completely changes the neurological target you're setting for your nervous system.
Okay, so that handles the baseline intention. You have to aggressively play to win and feed your brain the vocabulary of success. But let's be real here, even if your self-talk is perfectly dialed in, your brain still has to process the actual environment around you.
Sure.
And life is chaotic. You have personal stress, you have distractions. How does a champion prevent all that outside noise from just hijacking their focus in the middle of a high-pressure moment?
They utilize a highly specific cognitive boundary that the source calls the mental locker.
The mental locker.
Yeah. The concept is that when you step onto the field or, into the boardroom or up to the podium, you absolutely cannot carry external baggage with you. The breakdown gives this great example of a student athlete.
Okay.
If that athlete steps onto the field while quietly agonizing over a difficult math test they have to take the next morning, their physical performance will immediately drop. They have to mentally visualize taking that anxiety, placing it inside a locker, shutting the door, and leaving it there until the game is over.
I think we fundamentally underestimate how much damage that kind of background worry does to our performance. I mean, think about your brain like a computer's RAM.
That's a great analogy.
Right. You only have so much working memory available at any given second. If you're sitting in a crucial job interview and like 30% of your cognitive RAM is secretly running a background program, worrying about an argument you had that morning.
Or agonizing over a grammar rule you learned 3 weeks ago.
Exactly. Then you only have 70% of your brain power left to actually connect with the interviewer. You're operating at a massive deficit.
That is exactly the mechanism at play. Cognitive load theory dictates that your working memory is severely limited. The mental locker clears the RAM, and once you clear that mental space, you open the door to what the book calls Zen in the zone.
Zen in the zone.
It's a state of 100% immersion in the present moment. You aren't analyzing your performance from the outside, you aren't regretting the sentence you just messed up, and you aren't planning 3 steps ahead. You're simply observing and acting with total clarity.
Okay, I hear you on Zen in the zone, but I have to push back a little. My brain never just shuts up.
Yeah, few do.
If I'm in a high-stakes conversation, I'm constantly evaluating myself. I'm watching their facial expressions. I'm worrying if they understood my accent. I'm second-guessing my word choices. How does someone actually actively turn off that analytical machine without just getting more anxious about the fact that they can't clear their mind?
It's a vital question because clearing your mind is actually one of the biggest misconceptions about achieving the zone.
Wait, really?
Yeah. The goal is not to flip a switch and instantly experience a void of zero thoughts. That is biologically impossible for most people, and trying to force it just spikes your cortisol.
That makes so much sense.
The technique A.J. Hoge highlights involves breath meditation, but used specifically as a biological anchor. When you sit and focus entirely on the physical sensation of air moving in and out of your nose, you're giving your attention a highly specific home base.
So the distraction is still going to happen. The thoughts are still going to pop up.
Inevitably, your brain will start chattering about dinner or that email you forgot to send. But the practice isn't about preventing the distraction. It's about noticing it without emotional reaction and gently bringing your focus back to the breath.
Oh.
Every time you notice the thought and return to the breath, you're essentially doing a mental push-up. Over time, you train your brain's default mode network to let go of obsessive thoughts faster. You build the neurological muscle required to snap back to the present moment, which is the only place the zone actually exists.
But let's look at what happens when the present moment is just objectively terrible. Because you can be totally in the zone, your mental locker can be secured, your self-talk can be flawless, and you can still fail.
Oh, absolutely.
You might face an opponent who is just naturally faster. You might bomb the presentation. How does an elite mindset absorb a direct hit from reality without their confidence just shattering into a million pieces?
Well, this requires a profound philosophical shift in how you define success. Performers generally fall into one of 2 categories: those who seek awards and those who operate with a mastery approach.
Okay, break those down.
People who seek awards are entirely dependent on external validation. They need the gold medal, the public praise, the perfect test score, the promotion. Their entire identity is hostage to the opinions of others and the final outcome of the event.
Which is an incredibly fragile way to live because you ultimately don't control the outcome.
Exactly. The mastery approach, on the other hand, is entirely internal. It is a relentless, quiet focus on executing your personal best. The analysis brings up the legendary college basketball coach John Wooden.
Oh, sure.
He's arguably one of the most successful coaches in the history of American sports, yet he famously rarely talked to his players about winning the game.
Really? Never talked about winning.
Barely ever. His core philosophy was, success is peace of mind. He knew that you cannot control if the opposing team is miraculously shooting better that day. You can only control your own preparation, your own focus, and your own effort.
It reminds me of the concept of equanimity, which the breakdown notes has deep roots in ancient philosophies like Sanatana Dharma. It's this discipline of doing your absolute best while accepting that the ultimate result is just out of your hands.
Yes.
Think about being a master gardener. You can select the perfect seeds, you can test the soil pH, you can plant them at the exact right depth and water them diligently every single morning at dawn.
Right, you master every single variable.
Exactly. But you absolutely cannot control the weather. If a freak hailstorm rolls in and destroys the crop, it doesn't mean you are a terrible gardener. You master the process and you surrender the result.
And that surrender is where the true resilience comes from. It ties perfectly into the military mantra mentioned in the analysis. Improvise, adapt, overcome.
Improvise, adapt, overcome.
When you adopt a mastery approach, you anticipate the hailstorm. You don't tie your ego to the sunny weather. So when the unexpected challenge hits, you don't freeze up or complain that it's unfair. You remain completely fluid. You assess the new reality, you adapt your strategy, and you execute the very next step required to keep moving forward.
Okay, this level of internal mastery sounds, honestly, enlightened in theory. But how do you manufacture that calm on demand? Because it's easy to talk about equanimity when we're sitting here in a studio, but it's an entirely different thing to feel it when the adrenaline hits, your heart is pounding, and you're sweating under the fluorescent lights of an interview room.
Oh, for sure.
What is the physical mechanism champions actually use to trigger this state under pressure?
They use a psychological tool called anchoring. It's essentially Pavlovian conditioning for your own confidence.
Oh, interesting.
You intentionally tie a specific peak emotional state to a specific physical action or sensory input. This is why you see pre-game routines. An Olympic swimmer behind the blocks isn't just listening to random music and stretching.
Right.
They're playing a highly specific, high-energy song that they have rigorously associated with dominance and speed. They might do a specific physical movement, like slapping their chest or jumping in a precise rhythm.
So they are literally hacking their nervous system.
Precisely. Through rigorous repetition, they've wired a neural pathway that says, when I hear this specific bass line and perform this specific physical movement, my body dumps dopamine and adrenaline, and my focus narrows. They're signaling their biology that it is time to perform.
That's wild.
And anyone can build this. You could curate a specific playlist that you only listen to when you feel incredibly confident, and then use that exact playlist in your car right before walking into a terrifying meeting to trigger that exact same neurochemical state.
Okay, that handles the pregame. But what about the postgame? How do champions handle the pressure when things actually go wrong in the moment and the mistake is glaring?
Yeah.
Because I know my own bad habits. If I speak a second language for 30 minutes and the conversation is flowing beautifully, but I completely butcher one verb tense at the very end,
You focus on the verb tense.
I will walk away from that interaction and fixate entirely on that one mistake. It will replay on a loop in my head while I try to fall asleep.
Well, you're fighting millions of years of evolution there. Humans have a built-in negativity bias, you know? Our brains are wired to fixate on threats and errors to keep us safe. But a champion explicitly trains their mind to override that bias. The breakdown highlights a great example from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. After a grueling, terrible training session where you got completely dismantled on the mat, the natural instinct is to agonize over the submissions you missed. But a champion will walk off the mat and intentionally, forcefully celebrate the one tiny technical detail they got right that day.
Wow. So they actively starve the failure of attachment.
Exactly.
They feed the success. And this is especially critical during live execution. Think of a professional golfer. If they hit a terrible shot into a bunker and they spend the next 3 holes fuming with anger, dwelling on the mechanics of that bad swing.
Their physical tension skyrockets.
Yep. Their fluid mechanics break down entirely, and one bad shot spirals into a lost tournament.
Which is exactly what happens in cognitive performance. If you're giving a speech or speaking a new language and you freeze on a word, your internal alarm bells go off.
Right.
If you start panicking about that error mid-sentence, your cortisol spikes, your working memory shuts down, you lose your train of thought, and your overall fluency just collapses for the rest of the conversation. Exactly.
But I have to ask the hard question here. If we are intentionally starving our failures of attention and only celebrating the tiny things we did right, aren't we just indulging in delusion?
That's a fair question.
I mean, how do you ever fix a glaring structural flaw in your performance if you actively refuse to focus on your mistakes? Won't you just permanently wire in bad habits?
That is the most common critique of positive sports psychology, but it stems from confusing emotional weight with objective data.
Okay.
A champion doesn't ignore the data of a mistake, they strip the emotion out of it. And this is driven by the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen, which means constant, never-ending improvement.
Kaizen.
Yeah. Celebrating your tiny wins isn't about pretending you're perfect. It's about manufacturing the emotional fuel required to sustain Kaizen over a timeline of years.
Oh, I see. So it's fundamentally an endurance strategy. It's about preventing burnout.
Completely. You don't master a complex skill, whether it's a martial art, corporate leadership, or a foreign language, in a week. It is a grueling marathon of micro-adjustment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If you allow your brain to attach severe emotional pain to every single mistake you make along that journey, your amygdala will eventually associate the entire activity with trauma. You'll get frustrated, you'll procrastinate, and you'll ultimately quit.
Which happens to so many language learners.
Right. But by hyper-focusing on the tiny 1% wins, you build sustainable momentum. You begin to view mistakes not as proof of your fundamental inadequacy, but just as neutral feedback required for the next iteration of growth.
When you step back and look at this entire framework, playing to win, securing the mental locker, mastering the process over the prize, and utilizing Kaizen, the ultimate takeaway for you listening right now is incredibly empowering.
It really is.
Because unlike physical athletes, who inevitably hit a biological wall where their reaction times slow down and their knees give out, cognitive performers don't have an expiration date.
It's the ultimate advantage of the internal game. The analysis specifically points to Steve Kaufman, a renowned polyglot who is successfully mastering new, highly complex languages well into his 70s.
That's amazing.
When you apply a champion's mind to cognitive skills like communication, learning, or leadership, your runway for improvement is practically endless. You aren't fighting the biological clock of a sprinter. You have a lifetime to refine your process.
And the power to start refining it is entirely in your hands, starting today. You can actively curate your own mental locker. You can build your own physical anchors and pre-game routines to hack your confidence. You can make the deliberate choice to stop agonizing over a single mistake and start fueling your endurance with tiny wins.
Yeah, every single challenge you face is a brand new practice field. Every difficult email, every high-pressure meeting, every complex conversation is an immediate opportunity to leave your baggage at the door, anchor your focus to your breath, and step fully into the zone.
So we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over today as you step back into your world. Think about the very next difficult scenario on your calendar. If you treated that everyday moment exactly like an Olympic final, if you actually built a pre-game routine, larked your external stress away, and consciously shifted from playing not to lose to actively playing to win, how drastically would your reality change before the day is over?